Good morning, everybody. Uh, this morning, I think I'd just talk a little bit about where you grew up, where I grew up, where you grew up at. Um, we all grew up somewhere, and I grew up in Ohio, in up in northeastern little town called. Well, actually, it wasn't. I was going to say Worcester, Ohio, but actually, I grew up in a little town called Funk, Ohio, Funk. Um, and it's actually to take you back a little further, it was just down the road is another little burg where I was actually grew up. It was Lake Fork, you know. So there was a several small towns there on it used to be Route 95, and there was Lake Fork, and then there was Funk, and then there was Blatchesville, and this was out in the country. These little towns. Actually, Lake Fork years ago had a very small general store, and I really don't remember it. It was just a little bit before my time. I remember them talking about it, but the Funk store, I used to go there all the time. When I got older and had a bicycle right over the Funk store. They had penny candy. You could get ice cream over there. They had just about everything. It's been closed now for a few years, but not real long ago. But it's one of those old-time stores that was out in the country there that you could get kind of like a convenience store on it, but it was better. They had a meat counter. You could get meat, bolognas, cheeses, all kinds of stuff. If you choose to smoke, they had cigarettes, and they didn't have no liquor though. But that was the burg that I grew up into. So actually, when I was born, it was Lake Fork. Lake Fork was the tiny little town that a lot of my ancestors lived there. There's a little church there where my parents are buried, my grandparents are buried. I have aunts and uncles buried there. I believe some of my great grandparents are buried there. So that's kind of where I come up with a little burg called Lake Fork. Yeah, when I was younger, I remember. Lake Fork and Funk in that area being just a nice, homely little area. Everybody knew everybody. We never locked our doors. Never. I mean, you'd go away. I go down. We lived real close to my grandparents' house, like a quarter of a mile. You go down to my grandparents' house. It was never locked. You just go on in. But that was a different time. That was back in the. I was born in '53, and the late 50s and early 60s, crime wasn't nothing like it is nowadays. You could leave your house unlocked and walk away. Nobody would take nothing or bother nothing. So that's quite different to today. Today you actually have security cameras. You have you make sure everything's locked up, and then you're not even sure if everything's secure. So it's quite a difference from when I was a kid and now. What kind of place was it that you grew up in, and what part of the country? I said I was up in northern Ohio, and can't say I liked Ohio, but when you grow up in different areas, it kind of forms what type of person you are. Not growing up in a big cities or nothing, it was quite a bit different than the kids that grew up in cities. And the cities that I'm talking about, even close to me, was small, little towns. I'm not talking a city like, say, Orlando, Florida, or Cleveland, Ohio. I'm talking about a little town. I lived close to Worcester, Ohio. Just small little town. I don't know numbers and population, but it's just a small little town there. I mean, they had a downtown, quite a few different stores in that, but it wasn't huge or nothing. But it has a lot to do with the way you your values and that. I grew up on a farm. As I got a little bit older, we baled hay, we milked cows. Before I got up and went to school in the morning, I had to go out and milk cows and come back home from school and milk cows again. So we used to go to a small elementary school in Dromesville, Ohio. Just a small. It was. I think back when I first started school, the school had 1 through 12. We didn't have kindergarten. It was first grade through 12th grade. I'm not sure when they split off and just made that the elementary school. But back then, everybody was there. The upstairs was the high school and downstairs was elementary school. And school's okay. I can't say I ever liked school. And when I was younger in elementary school, wasn't nearly as bad. The older you got, the less I liked school. Because I wasn't the popular sports kids. They were the popular ones, and they were the ones that everybody liked. And since I wasn't a sports fan, I wasn't involved in that, so I wasn't as popular in school. Subjects, I've always, I think even from little, I've been a practical person, and so many things in school they teach isn't practicality, it's memorization. And a lot of testing and stuff is just about how good you memorize something. And this is a whole nother subject, but yeah, it's if you have a poor memory, and I've always had a poor short-term memory, but hands-on, I can figure out just about anything, But to memorize things, I have to figure out what I'm doing and do it hands-on. So tests in school didn't do that well in them because I had a poor memory. So grades weren't always the best, and to this day things like English spelling just absolutely makes no sense to me because it's not practical. It's memorizing verbs, nouns, how to spell things. They don't spell things right, and so I'm a very, very poor speller, but I'm very good at other things. When you put something hands on, I'll figure it out. And even computer stuff, I can I can buzz around a computer quicker than somebody that's got a master's degree, And I don't put much value on education in that way. Because I never needed it. I always think education was a cop out, so that's just what I think. And so, like when we were younger, we did move around quite a bit. We moved. Yeah, mostly it was because of my dad's job and that he had taken different jobs and moved around to where the work was at, and lived in a few interesting places. We had an ice cream stand up in part of Ohio there that my dad operated for. He just ran it one summer. It wasn't very profitable, but then after that, we ended up moving into an old milk factory. This milk factory had like an apartment upstairs that we lived in, and I think we lived there pretty cheap. Heated with, we had a cook stove, heated with wood. I remember my parents going out and chopping wood and cutting wood. So that's how we heated the place, and we cooked on it too. So part of your day was always keeping the wood fire burning. Keeping the home fires burning is what we had to do. And so it was winter times was cold. Basically, with a cook stove for your main heating source, one end of the house, like usually it was in the kitchen, and that area was pretty warm, and the living room was right off of it. It was a little less warm, but not bad. But bedrooms were cold. We lived. And just like say, we lived very inexpensively, and so we'd take hot water bottles to bed at night to keep warm and that. And believe it or not, as a kid, I remember if you'd have a glass of water, a lot of times there was ice on the water in the morning. It was pretty cold at that. So it was, I guess if you want to call it rough. We didn't think it being rough because that's just what we did. But compared to the luxuries that people and kids have today's, it was rough. I think a lot of my growing up did form me for who I am today. I'm very practical. I can. There's just not too much I don't do on my own. I usually don't call the handyman or a serviceman. As I've gotten older, my body don't allow me to do things like I used to. So you bend down, it's hard to get up, and it's like the things that I used to do all the time, I just have trouble doing. So, but yeah, in just my childhood, growing up that way, I worked hard, and I've always learned to work hard. I can't say I didn't use my mind throughout the years because I believe I have. There's a lot of people who ask for my advice, especially on electronics stuff and that. A lot of people will ask my advice on it. I enjoy doing it, and I figure it out. I'm no expert on it, but I'm probably good at it as somebody that has went to school and did it. In fact, I've taught people who went to school how to do things, and it's because I use what I have up here. I feel nowadays a lot of people are too lazy to use what they have, and that's a shame because I believe I'm not a really smart person, but I believe everybody's capable of doing the same thing that I can do if they apply themselves to doing it. All right, growing up in, like I said, in Ohio, it was cold winters, and I always hated the cold. You know, in fact, I really become to despise the cold. Oh man.
Hi!
Talk
I
about,
still like Ohio.
you still like?
It was cold, but
She don't know any better.
I didn't have to walk uphill in snow barefoot.
I had to go up
school.
both ways.
I rode the bus. Actually, I grew up in Akron when I was little, and we walked to school there. So
She never learned. Florida's a good place to be.
I love Florida.
Okay, so anyways, I said I never liked Ohio. Not my favorite place. I'm getting bombed all over here. Photobombed. And Abby, she grew up. She was born in Tennessee for about the first 6 months, and she's been in Florida ever since. Hey, Abby, do you like Florida? Do you like Florida?
Salam, my dad.
Shalom, my daddy. And Cassie, who's sneaking off out there and is going to go out here and get in trouble and bark at it. There she goes. Anyways, she was a Florida dog. She was growing up in Florida. All right, as I grew up, I said I didn't really like the cold, and I can't say I liked Ohio. Just never did. Still don't. Been back here a couple times since I moved to Florida. I mean, look at this. Sitting on my swing. Got beautiful plants. This is December. It's going to be like 82 degrees today, and I mean it's great. So you know, I've always for years I wanted to move to Florida. I did that just about 20 years ago. I moved down. Yeah, so there was many years. You know, I had this goal to move down to Florida, and just between jobs and everything else, you know, it didn't happen as soon as I would have liked it to. If I had my way, I would have done it a lot quicker than I did. But like I said, it's been 20 years ago. I had people when I moved down here said I wouldn't like it. They said I'd be back in a year, and I said it's been 20 years. I went back. It was 15 years before I had went back, and when I went back to the hometown, I didn't like it. You know, it's just like I've been back a couple times since then. Every time I go up, I do not like Ohio. No, I mean a lot of people do. That's fine. You know, you should like where you live, and if you enjoy a certain area, that's where you should be. And you know, like I said, I totally love this area down here. But I don't know, did any of you ones out there, Ewans, I don't know if that's a Ohio word or what. I always say that a lot, Ewans. If any Ewans, have you moved anywhere else? Are you still in the same spot you was pretty much from birth? You know, have you moved around a lot? You know, what's your status like there? And the main thing that I like in Florida, it's warm weather. You know, it's gorgeous. It gets warm in the summertime, but you know, I've analyzed that wherever you live, you're going to have an extreme temperature one way or the other, either extreme cold or extreme warm, and it depends on what you enjoy. I don't like cold, so I don't like the extreme cold. I like heat. Extreme warm, yeah, it gets warm time, but I don't mind it, you know. So, you know, it's all on what you like and what your body tells you that's enjoyable for you. Yeah, I worked, majority of my life I worked in the upholstery industry. I upholstered furniture for many, many years. I had some pretty exclusive decorating shops in Ohio I did work for. And you know, I always took a lot of pride in the quality I did, and I was known as a good upholsterer, you know, just because I think I did it right. That's what I strived for, you know, on it. Wasn't a great paying job. It's nothing that you're going to make much money at. In fact, it was one job that you really kind of struggled at. You know, it had a lot of things. It's like. One of the biggest things that used to irritate me about working in upholstery, somebody would come and say they wanted a sofa done, and they'd say, "Can you do this for less?" And it's really an insult, especially if you're a skilled craftsman. And also, if you went to work and you work for a person or a company that you get a regular paycheck, and they came in this morning and says, "Now, could you work for less today?" This is what people was asking me, can you work for less? That was an insult. and a lot of times you was afraid you didn't get to work because you needed a certain amount of work, and you do it for less. So yeah, upholstery as a livelihood, made very, very, very little money. Now today I thought I would talk a little bit about where you growed up at. You know, I'd be interested to hear comments from other people. Where did you grow up at, and you know, what was your lifestyle like as you was younger? Do you feel it developed you for who you are today, and was it maybe good or bad? You know, there's a lot of things that shape us as we grow up in life, and you know, I mean, life for me has been pretty good. It's had some downfalls in different areas, but overall it's been really good. And so today I just thought I'd share a little video about where I grew up from. I'd like to hear more about where the rest of you had grown up at, and what your experiences was, what school was like for you, jobs, what part of the country you live in, and why do you stay where you do? Why do you live in a certain part of the country? Why maybe you do live somewhere where you're not really that fond of where you live, and why haven't you moved on? What kept you staying? Kids? You know, I never had kids, so that they didn't keep me from anyway. They wouldn't have anyways. Kids would not have kept me from living where I want to live, you know, because kids have their own lives. But yeah, leave some comments below. Hey, if you enjoyed this little video, you know, give us a thumbs up. And I enjoy just filming things and what's going on in my life today. And was my thoughts. So if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free to subscribe. You'll be know when I put up another video, which basically is every day on it. So until the next time.